Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Herb.
More than 2 dozen people turned out to support what they hope will be a ballot measure to tax cannabis. Gwen Local 6 reporter Brent Weisberg was in Salem for today's registration deadline and has more from the state capitol.
And good afternoon. The supporters here say they needed to gather more than 80,000 signatures, but in the end they say they got 165. Supporters of I-9, also known as the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act, would like to see marijuana regulated, just like cigarettes and liquor. By doing so, they say the state could tax the marijuana to make a profit. Officials here say that this measure would free up an estimated $60 million in Oregon. They say that money could be used to better fund Oregon's law enforcement agencies.
We specifically drafted this bill to be upheld in federal court, and we did it in several ways. One is we implement a system of controls mandated by international treaty. The system of controls that we implement are directly from the Single Convention Treaty of 1961.
Last year, however, voters rejected a measure to allow dispensaries to sell a small amount of marijuana to people with medical marijuana cards. The Secretary of State's office will have to verify all these signatures, and once that's done and she approves it, this measure will be on the November ballot. Reporting for you in Salem, I'm Brent Weisberg, KOIN Local 6.
There's not a day, not a single day that doesn't go by on the interstate that we don't put somebody in jail for narcotics. We're finding mainly marijuana, cocaine, methamphetamine are the three main drugs we find. We find all of it, but those are the three main drugs, and out of all of those will probably be marijuana.
This is what the task force does every day. A total of 1,000 drug cases last year, 600 already on the books for this year. The appearance of a new drug is not a good sign. It just adds to the organized drug traffic.
My life was completely different when I was a police officer. I spent the first 10 years of my life in California because my dad was in the military. My dad moved myself and my brothers to Texas, where I trained coon dogs, I trained cow dogs, I trained obedience dogs, and then later I went to the Kilgore Police Academy at the age of 21 and graduated with my peace officer's license. Fresh out of the police academy, 21 years old, like most 21-year-olds, they haven't experienced certain tragedies in life. They haven't experienced certain triumphs in life. And that's how I was when I was 20 years old. I was gung-ho, high energy, totally believed in what I was doing, but I was blinded in wisdom because of my lack of experiences in life. I spent 4 years as a police officer before being hired by the Permian Basin Drug Task Force. In those 4 years, I trained my own narcotic detector dog. When the Permian Basin Drug Task Force called me for an interview, I drove all the way to West Texas, which felt like halfway around the world to me. I had my dog in back of the truck, and when I arrived, my dog bounced out with a rope, not a leash, and I had a minnow bucket that I used as a watering pail, and my supervisors were thinking, oh my gosh, who is this country boy with a rope, a dog, and a minnow pail? And after hiding marijuana and showing how well my dog did, it kind of surprised them, and that led to them hiring me. It wasn't long, and I began to find loads and loads and loads of drugs. I couldn't believe working with the Border Patrol and the FBI and the ATF and the DEA. We'd get close to the border and we'd get on the interstates and we'd run search warrants and we would work undercover, and it just never quit. It was constant. And later, with that type of training, I switched and reversed and started seizing money, and then I couldn't believe the cash that was leaving our country going into Mexico from the drug traffickers. So I soon realized no matter how much I seized or how many arrests I made, I was not catching a fraction of what was coming through the borders. I was sent to schools all over Texas that were taught by the DEA, the U.S. government. In these classes, I was taught and trained that marijuana was a demon-type drug. I really believed that marijuana was harmful, and the people using the marijuana and the people smuggling the marijuana were just pieces of trash. And that was about the time DEA was launching the cannabis eradication program, where they were flying over and spotting marijuana fields from the air, and then sending ground troops in to eradicate those. In fact, I'm trained to fly in the air and spot marijuana fields. You know, I noticed the people that I was busting for marijuana use in particular were really good people. They never acted out, they never got violent, they were always cooperative in comparison to people I arrested for being drunk. You know, they would fight and scream and act crazy. And I started putting two and two together. The government's telling me marijuana is a demon weed. I'm arresting all these people for marijuana that are nonviolent, including getting in raid gear with 10 other grown men and guns, more guns than we would ever need, crashing into these homes, dragging the kids away, screaming with the parents screaming, everybody in tears. We're sending the kids to Department of Human Services. We're sending the parents to jail over marijuana. Well, I knew some of these people, and I knew they weren't gangsters. I knew they were nonviolent people. And then later on, I experimented with marijuana myself, and then began doing a lot of research. I learned marijuana was safe, that you cannot overdose on marijuana. I learned that there were a lot less traffic fatalities on marijuana than there was alcohol. I just learned that the harms I was taught by the government were a total lie, and they were false. And that's the moment when I started telling myself, this is not right. I'm believing my teachers without researching the facts for myself. Once I got the true evidence, then my conscience kicked in, the humanity in me, the compassion that said, oh my God, what the f am I doing busting into these homes, ruining lives and ruining families? And then I remembered what I had read, Jimmy Carter's statement, that when the legal side effects of a substance cause more harm to the person than the side effects of the substance itself, we have an injustice. When a bag of marijuana is touched, microscopic dust is transferred to your hand. Whatever you touch after that, you're transferring this microscopic dust, and the dog can and will alert. Steve picked the dog that has this psycho-type drive to find his ball. That's a prey drive. I found it almost impossible to get my narcotic detector dog to search for his ball when there was some other type of prey in the same area. For instance, a cat in the car. Even if we removed the cat, the dog could still smell the cat all over the car, and he was concentrating on where's the cat, not where's the ball. It was impossible to get my canine to search for marijuana in vehicles if we were pulled over near a roadkill. I would have the driver move the vehicle ahead at least 2 miles so the dog could get that other animal or that other prey out of his mind, where he could concentrate on searching for marijuana. So these deer scents and fox urines that hunters use, it's a good idea to spray your tires with that. It's a good idea to carry a cat in your car if you're going to have a couple of marijuana cigarettes. This confuses the dog, where his drive is channeled to chasing these things instead of looking for the marijuana.
Do you suffer from fear of losing your election? Are you terrified that voters will discover you've done nothing to improve their lives? Maybe it's time you talk to your spin doctor about Incarcerex. In clinical trials, Incarcerex has been shown effective at reducing election-related anxieties by making voters think you're doing something about the drug problem. It's simplistic and fast-acting. If your problems continue or get worse, you can always double or triple your dose of Incarcerex. Whether it's addiction, therapeutic use, or just casual use, there's an Incarcerex plan for every American. Best of all, taxpayers, not you, will foot the bill. So talk to your spin doctor about Incarcerex today. Common side effects include loss of civil liberties, police corruption, racial injustice, increased terrorism, spread of HIV and AIDS, and violent crime. Bloated prisons are also a common side effect. Stop taking Incarcerex if bloating lasts longer than 20 years. If you're trying to balance the budget, keep families together, or protect human rights, Incarcerex may not be right for you. Do not mix Incarcerex with the Constitution or common sense. So start taking Incarcerex and keep pretending you're doing something about the drug problem.
There are a lot of dynamics to this next traffic stop. 3 white males traveling westbound on Interstate 20. At first, I thought I had a small marijuana seizure. Later, we discovered a large amount of cash. There I go, leaning way in the vehicle again. Now, at this point, I've already smelled the marijuana. Now, I have all the passengers putting their hands on the seats or the dash. If an officer ever makes the passengers put their hands somewhere, he's alerted to something. Something's bothering him.
James, we're with the Drug Task Force. We're out here looking for narcotics, large amounts of money, stolen property, and weapons. We look for marijuana. Have you marijuana in your car? Who's been smoking weed in that car? I smell it all over you, and I smell it inside that car. Look at it while I'm talking.
Okay, notice here I'm being very intimidating. I mention and accentuate the fact that I'm looking for narcotics, specifically marijuana. I want him to wonder, does this guy know I've got marijuana?
Because between me and the dog, we don't miss nothing, Bubba. We don't miss a marijuana seed, a rose, a quarter bag, a pound. We don't miss nothing.
That's not true. Dogs do miss narcotics. Most people think a dog is a superhuman type instrument that law enforcement uses that can never fail. Dogs fail more often than not.
You mind if I search you? Square up with me, James. Square up with me, bud. Okay. If you lie, you're going to put you in jail, bud. Here's your rolling papers. Where's your weed? Huh? James, I can tell you're lying. Is this your marijuana? Is this your marijuana? You don't think that's marijuana? It smells like marijuana, looks like marijuana.
You see, James continues to lie. Listen, you are under zero obligation to tell the police you are committing a crime. You have the right to remain silent. Use that right in your favor.
You don't have anything to hide, do you?
No, officer. Well, I don't consent to any searches, sir.
This could be one of the most important lines you may ever have to deliver in your entire life.
I don't consent to any searches, sir.
Darrell remains courteous, but is not intimidated by this all-too-common tactic.
If the dogs find anything you're not supposed to have, I'm going to throw your ass in a jail cell overnight with some very bad men who would love to do some very bad things to 2 skinny boys like you two. Do you understand your choice?
Your rights do not disappear. just because an officer threatens to call in the dogs. And refusing a search does not give the officer the legal right to search or detain you.
There are three things that are vital that you must learn about search and seizure law: reasonable suspicion, probable cause, consent to search. Let's concentrate on reasonable suspicion and probable cause. Reasonable suspicions are items or things that the officer observes that when all put together in a package, one can reasonably be suspicious that you're up to some type of crime. Your hand being nervous when you hand them the driver's license, that's a very common reasonable suspicion, but it's not quite enough to indicate that this person is involved in a crime. Now, if we put your hand shaking and then stories are not matching between the driver and the passenger, again, that's two reasonable suspicions. And all of these reasonable suspicions put together is going to cause him to interview you longer. It's going to cause him to ask you for consent to search. It's going to keep him at the scene longer until he can gain consent or probable cause to search your vehicle. A police officer can have 50 reasonable suspicions, and he cannot search your car without your permission or a canine alert or some other probable cause. He can have one probable cause, and he can search your car without your permission, and you have to let him, or he can arrest you for resisting a search or a seizure. He has to detect a crime is being committed in his presence through one of his senses. If he sees a marijuana seed, or if he smells marijuana, or if a canine indicates the odor of marijuana, he has probable cause to search your vehicle, and there's nothing you can do about it. The goal of this section is to help you eliminate as many of these reasonable suspicions as we can, where there might be only one or two instead of 10 or 15. Did you notice all of the items scattered throughout the car? Each one of those items was either reasonable suspicion or probable cause. Let's go back to those items and I'll explain to you which is which. Did you notice the marijuana leaf on the key ring? Okay, it's not illegal to have this, but that's a reasonable suspicion. I can reasonably suspect that you're a pot smoker when you have this type of paraphernalia. Did you notice the rubber bands on the gear shifter? To an untrained eye, those are just rubber bands. To an interdiction officer, these rubber bands mean to me you might be smuggling money, because narcotics money is often wrapped in rubber bands. You would not believe the millions of dollars of marijuana I seized after noticing a roach in the ashtray. That's probable cause to search, and you're in trouble, so keep this out of your ashtray. The second probable cause was this marijuana pipe. Now, this is considered a tobacco pipe if it hasn't been used, but if he can see charred ash and smell that marijuana's been smoked in that, now that's drug paraphernalia, now it's probable cause. And then don't forget, if they find a marijuana seed laying in the floorboard, that's like seeing a pound of marijuana in the floorboard. It's just as good for them and gives them probable cause. I would check in the creases of the seats, because I knew people rolling marijuana cigarettes often dropped the seeds right down between their legs and they wound up in the crease. Rolling papers are a reasonable suspicion. Remember, one of the first places a police officer is going to look is the glove box. So keep all reasonable suspicions out of this area, including rolling papers. It's no secret I'm a fan of High Times, but guess what? Reasonable suspicion. So if you're going to travel with the High Times magazine or any other cannabis magazines, keep them hidden and out of sight as well. Scales are not illegal to have, but with all this other stuff in here, that would make the interdiction officer think that you are a marijuana dealer. So stay away from this kind of stuff. I love pointing out these reasonable suspicions because that's what separated me from being just a normal interdiction officer to one of the top interdiction officers. I noticed everything. Look at the clear plastic baggies. You know, this is indicative of narcotics dealing. Again, they're not illegal to have, but they are definitely a reasonable suspicion that will keep the interdiction officer at your car longer. Okay, let's talk about the beer. If you're not old enough to possess this, and there's somebody in the vehicle not old enough to possess it, that gives the officer probable cause to search for more alcoholic beverages. And upon searching for those alcoholic beverages, if he finds your stash of marijuana, that's a legal search. You're in trouble. So if you're underage, don't have this in your car. Did you notice the 2 shaving cream cans? That doesn't make sense. Men have 1 shaving cream can, most men. And of course, we all know these have hidden compartments in them. So if you're going to carry one of these, carry 1 of these. I've already taught you what reasonable suspicions and probable causes were. Let's talk about consent to search. You've heard your entire life, refuse consent, refuse consent, refuse consent. I don't recommend that. You're free to do whatever you want, but I recommend quite the opposite. If you've hidden your stash in a hard-to-find location, like taught earlier in this DVD, give the officer permission to search if he asks. Here's why. 100 times out of 100, when somebody refused consent to search to me, they always had something in their vehicle they did not want me to find. It was usually drugs. Sometimes it might be a Playboy magazine or something of that nature. But there was always something they did not want me to see. Law enforcement officers know this. Even though you have the constitutional right to refuse consent, when you refuse, it raises a huge red flag. You could almost call it a huge reasonable suspicion. Upon refusing consent, that officer automatically knows now you have something to hide. If you simply say, go ahead and search my car, he's probably going to make a quick cursory search and then you'll be on your way. If you refuse consent, he can do a weapons pat-down search of your vehicle without your permission, and upon patting the interior of the vehicle down for weapons, if he finds a marijuana seed or a marijuana pipe or something of that nature, or if he smells marijuana, then he's going to search your car without your permission. If you refuse consent to search, he's liable to get a narcotic detector dog to walk around the outside of your vehicle. If that dog fails to alert, as you learned in the K9 section, he could quite possibly cause that dog to false alert. Then you have no choice. He will also invite numerous other police officers at the scene. The call goes out on the radio. I've heard it 100 times. I have a refusal. I have a refusal. And police come from everywhere to figure out how to get in that car, and then they begin a real detailed search. So remember, if your stash is hidden well, like taught to you in this DVD, my recommendation is to give permission to search.
Are you tired of following all the rules? Ready to let loose? Have a little fun? Sounds like you need to. Get high. And with Narcomex Incorporated, your direct-to-consumer drug trafficking solution, you can. Narcomex values your business. That's why we're your #1 supplier of drugs, and you're our #1 consumer. These billions can't be wrong. We work hard for your business and have killed not 1, not 2, but 3 Mexican police and 2 journalists just to keep you high with that very joint. Why, our commitment to keeping you supplied has killed over 17,000 people right next door. Traffickers, soldiers, journalists, prosecutors, you name it. We're that passionate about your business. We've even begun to destroy some of your favorite tropical beach destinations. Because if you smoke enough at home, you don't even need a beach. But don't legalize it or grow it at home. Let us do the work for you. Sure, consumers boycotted evil companies, but there's no need to boycott Narcomex Incorporated, your direct-to-consumer drug trafficking solution, also offering heroin, meth, and cocaine. Narcomex Incorporated. Live a little, and forget others won't.
The best and the only way to win in a knock and talk situation is to never, ever, ever open your door for the police. Just as you're under no obligation to allow any citizen into your home, you're under no obligation to open the door for the cops. If the police had a legal right to be in your home, they wouldn't be knocking, they would be kicking. They would kick the door in and raid your house with a search warrant. The mere fact that they're knocking on your door tells you they don't have a right to be in your home, so don't open the door for them. If you hear a knock at your door and upon investigating, you notice it's the police, if your door is not locked, go ahead and lock it right then. I don't open the door for police. If you need to talk to me, have your dispatcher call my cell phone, or we can yell through the window like this. If you have a search warrant, here are my hands, kick the door in.
Legalize it, yeah, yeah. I will advertise it. Some call it camping. Some call it the weed. Some call it marijuana. Some of them call it ganja. Never mind, legalize it. Don't you ever criticize. Legalize it, yeah, yeah. I man will advertise it. Singers smoking.